assignments. The first assignment is 7.22. Revise the worker class for its 6-day work weeks, retaining the hours worked in the most recent 6 days. Actually, changing the 5-day week to a 6-day week is quite an easy process. First off, we change the 5 days. We open up the worker class here, and then we change number of days to 6. Then we add here, in the array, we add another day, comma 8. I guess I need a space there. And I probably need to make this 48 instead of 40. So that's all there is to it, that I just click compile. And I'm done with the first exercise. Exercise 7.24 says to modify listing 7.7 to print all workers who are older than the average worker. So in this next exercise, what I need to do is I need to print those workers who are older than half the other workers over the average. So I'm going to do the same thing here as I do here. I'm going to calculate the average worker's age. Then I'm going to print those who are more than 50% over the average, just like it has here. So this is inside what? Public class personnel data. Now what you're going to do is you're going to copy almost word for word this section here with the average of the workers' pay and printing those that make over 50% over the average. So this is how you do. You come down to line 19 here, and then you add a pop-up saying, now to compare age. So here, instead of calculating the average week's pay, you're calculating the average pay. So you almost do it word for word. So this is double total pay equals 0 over here. This is integer total age is equal to 0. Line 9. Line 10 here says for int k is equal to 0, k less than size, increment k, same as this. Then here it's total age is equal to plus equals item k, get birth year. And this one is total pay plus equals item k, C's week pay. So see, you're just changing just a little bit, almost word for word though. See that? So here we go. Double average age is equal to size equals 0. So what are you saying here? You're saying this is an if-else statement, right? You're checking for division by 0. That's exactly what you're doing. So if the size of your group here is 0, then you're going to return 0. Otherwise, the total age, you're going to take the total age and divide it by size. Same thing as they did over here with pay, total pay, okay, on line 12. So here I print those making more than 50% over the average, and here's those, print those older than the average age. String S2 is equal to blank. So here you just string S is equal to blank. So here on line 15 is your for loop again, as it is right here, almost word for word. You can see int k is equal to 0, k less than the size. As long as k is less than the size, you increment it 1 by 1. And here you go. If item k, get birth year, is greater than the average age, what you do is you add to the count, right? You do S2 plus equals item, just like you did here. Almost exactly. Then finally, you just put up here, show the message, and then whatever you end up with a count. Okay? That's how you do it. Of course, what I did next is I copied listing 7.7, named it, put it in its own file in my system here, and I called it personnel data. Okay? And the only thing I did differently here, now this is a continuation of something. I had to add in the import javix swing.j option pane statement here, because we do have a j option pane statement way at the bottom here. See there? All the way at the bottom. So we're going to add our new code after this statement here. So the next thing I do is I start adding the code that we prepared. First, we put in there the message, the pop-up that tells the user that we're going to compare age now. And then we add in what we showed before. Int total age is equal to 0. We instantiate total age as 0. Then we start our for loop. And what we're doing here is we're going to get the total birth year, and then we're going to get the average. So once again, there's our if-else statement. Then we start adding the people who are over average age into the string we call S2. Then we go through another for loop. This time we get the birth year of those people who are greater than the average year. Then finally we print the number of people who are greater than the average year. That's all there is to it. Oh, and we add in those last closing curly braces. Oh, one other thing that I wanted to mention is when you copy and paste this, remember they have C weeks pay here, and we used what was printed in the listings of get weeks pay instead of C weeks pay. So you just have to change those instances. Exercise 7.29. Write a method public worker oldest worker in the worker list. The executor returns the worker object who is the oldest. Return null if no workers. Exercise 729, here we are in the worker list. So all we are doing here is we're running through the worker array with a for loop. Here's our opening statement. We're going to instantiate oldest for the temporary value of its older worker to date as we run through a for loop. In this for loop, we're going to be checking all the workers' ages. Inside our for loop, we have an if statement that compares birth years. If the worker string has any workers in it, and of course we instantiate k to 0. Of course it's going to stay at 0 if the list is empty. So here you go. If the loop is empty, you return null. Otherwise, you're going to return the oldest value. And of course, you end it with a closing curly brace. Exercise 730. Write a method public boolean equals worker list par in the worker class worker list. The executor tells whether it has the same workers as the worker list parameter using the equals method from the workers class in the same order. In exercise 730, we're comparing two lists to see if they have the same workers in the same order. Here we declare the method as we're instructed to in the lesson. Obviously, if the sizes are different, they're not equal. So the first thing we do is to compare size with an if statement. We don't need to check any further if this is false. We run a for loop if they have the same length. This time we're running a check item by item to see if the two lists contain the same thing. If its item does not equal the corresponding par item, we don't need to check any further. It's going to return false. Otherwise, when we complete the list, it returns true. This is what it looks like. Exercise 7.31. Write a method public worker list high ones in worker list. The executor returns a new worker list object containing only its worker objects whose pay is above average. In this exercise, we're listing all the workers who have above average pay. Once again, we declare the method as we are instructed in the lesson. Here we create a new list to hold the names of the highly paid workers. We instantiate the sum to 0. Why is it double? Because we have fractional values. Dollars and cents are expressed in decimals, right? Now we're going to run a for loop to add up all the workers' pay in the list. We are loading up all the workers' pay into a variable called sum here, remember? Now we have a variable that divides sum by the size to come up with the average. This determines the average workers' pay. We divide the total number of workers' pay by the number of workers. Once again, obviously, this is a double. It's a fraction of dollars and cents, correct? So we're going to create a list, a new array consisting of slots. So we're going to go have a variable called current slot, and we're going to instantiate it to 0. Actually, current slot is going to be the current placeholder of where we are in the worker list. So we're going to run through the list again with a for loop. Once again, we're not going to be adding up everybody's income this time. We're going to be checking to see if the employee is highly paid. So we check the person's weekly pay, and if it's above average, we add it to the list. This if statement checks each item to see if the week's pay is above average. If this is true, we add the name to the list. If we add the name to the list, we have to increase the list size, right? So we increment to the next item. We go to the next current slot. And finally, when we're through with the list, we can now return our new list with the highly paid workers. 7.32. Write a method public void add all worker list given in worker list. The executor adds all the worker values from worker list parameter to its own list, stopping only if its array becomes full. Throw an exception if given is null. Once again, for exercise 732, we're in the worker list. In this exercise, we add worker values from the parameter list to the worker list. We have a size check to prevent adding more workers if the array becomes filled. And if the parameter list is empty, we throw an exception. Once again, we start the method exactly as the exercise says. Now we throw an error code if the list is empty. Hopefully you remember how to do this from Programming 2 class. This statement produces an error code. If you're not familiar with this, you don't remember it, this is the code of how to do that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to instantiate a size check, and we'll call it check. And we're going to initiate it to 0. Now we run the for loop to add the new workers from the par list to the worker list. You will note there are 3 conditions for running this if statement. As long as the check confirms that is less than the array size, and the next item is not blank, or the name is not blank, the program will add the new item to the worker list. Program will increment the size of the worker list, and finally it will increment the size of the checklist and go through the next item until it's filled. Exercise 711A. Write an action method named clear for a subclass of array list. The executor removes all of the values it contains. This time what we do is we're going to go inside the array list class. So once again, this is an action method. It's for a subclass of array list. So this class can actually be written as a class on its own since it's addressing a subclass. But in such a case, you need to put in the keyword super here. so that you know that extends the array list class. Okay. And here what you're doing is you're clearing all the values. We have this method called clear. It's not going to produce anything. All it's going to do is going to empty out our array. So then we just run a for loop, and then we just remove all the elements. We remove every element. We go through it, we instantiate it. Then when we're done, we finally move the last value. That's how we do it. Exercise 711B. Write a query method named contains for a subclass of array list. The executor tells whether it contains a given object parameter. Use the equals method for the test. So this being a query method for 711B, for a subclass of array list, we're looking for a certain object parameter within the list. So remember, Boolean returns true or false, so we're going to see if the object is in there. We're not doing anything with it, we're just checking to see it's there. So we're running a for loop here. And if there's a value within the loop that equals whatever you have in your parameter object here, you're going to return true. Otherwise, you return false. And that's exercise 711B. 711C. Write an action method named flip for a subclass of array list. The executor swaps its first and second values, swaps its third and fourth values, swaps its fifth and sixth values, etc. I was not able to produce a working solution for this exercise, so if any of you want to write something in comments, feel free to do so. I'm done.